Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is Sue Rose, and I'm with the Department of Early Learning, ECEAP. I'm really glad that you could join us today for this exciting topic of the Request for Application Round 2. So please feel free, if you're having, I'm going to type something right now into the chat box. I want to just make sure that everybody can hear me. I'd hate to get started and then have get through a few slides and have no one be able to hear me. So I'm going to just type that in, and then we'll get started. Okay, so I went ahead and sent out a little chat message. If you can, so it looks like we have at least one participant who cannot hear me. And I will just say that you'll want to make sure that you've entered your audio pin. And I guess Andrea can't hear me, so saying that doesn't really help things. So let me see if we can take care of this. Okay, everybody, I am trying to get us started here. And if you are, I wasn't talking for a little bit there. I had it myself on mute, so that may be some of the reason that you couldn't hear me. And then there should be a screen kind of off to the right on your screen that you can see when we type. It's a place where you can type in questions, or you can see, and it looks like I got Andrea on there. Good, good, good. Okay, so during this webinar, we are going to, I would love for you to type in your questions, and just know that I won't be answering those questions today. We instead will be putting our answers in writing and then posting them on the DEL website for you. So keep that in mind. You should see a little box that you can type your questions into that we will log and then get answers. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so today's objectives, we're going to do an overview of the 2015-16 Request for Applications Round 2. And we are going to, I'll give you a little orientation to the Early Childhood Education and Assistance Program, which is also known as ECEAP. And then we will go over the components of the Request for Application. And then where it says questions, that's the final call for questions. Go ahead and type those in by the end of today's webinar so we can work to get you answers and have those posted. So ECEAP, which is Early Childhood Education and Assistance Program, is actually Washington's state-funded pre-kindergarten program that prepares some of the state's most vulnerable 3- and 4-year-old children for success in school and in life. So the Department of Early Learning, also known as DEL, you might hear me refer to us as DEL or DEL during this call, but DEL oversees the program, which since 1985 has focused on the well-being of the whole child by providing comprehensive nutrition, health, education, and family support services to Washington's most at-risk children. So the goals of ECEAP. The goals of ECEAP are to achieve kindergarten readiness, including academic, social, and health goals, foster families' engagement in their children's learning experiences, and strengthen families' resilience and support self-sufficiency goals. So one of the other things I wanted to remind you about is during our time together on this webinar, you may find it most beneficial to have your request for application in front of you, because I'm going to be walking you through that. If you don't have a copy in front of you, that's totally okay. Again, we're going to be recording this webinar, and we'll post it on the DEL website. But the reason I wanted to have it in front of you is that I'm only going to touch on certain areas. I won't go into every piece of the application. I'll just be pulling out pieces. And if you wanted to follow along, you could do that. Okay? All right, so in the RFA, we do have a definitions page. And I just wanted to pull out a few of those definitions right now. So when we refer to the term contractor, that means an organization whose application has been accepted by DEL and is awarded a fully executed written contract. Mixed delivery system. Now that means preschool services provided by public and private organizations such as schools, ESDs, also known as educational service districts, community and technical colleges. This refers to local governments and community-based providers, including licensed childcare and nonprofits. So when we talk about Part Day model in ECEAP, beginning in the 2015-16 school year, organizations implementing the Part Day model will provide high-quality, comprehensive preschool services, Part Day, a minimum of 3 hours per class session, a minimum of 360 hours per year, for a minimum of 30 weeks. So this is more hours than is currently required in our ECEAP performance standards for the Part Day model. Service area agreement. This is a written agreement between two ECEAP contractors or between an ECEAP contractor and a Head Start grantee, specifying how they share or divide service areas, recruitment processes, and otherwise work together to serve eligible children and families. And then subcontractor. This is someone who's not in employment of the contractor, but is who is performing all or part of the business activities under this request for application under a separate contract with that contractor. So hence the word subcontractor. Okay, so Part Day ECEAP, I already stated this, but now you have it on the screen in front of you. So beginning in the 2015-16 school year, Part Day ECEAP needs to be at least 360 hours of preschool in no less than 30 weeks a year. So that's 3 classroom hours per session. And then contractors receive an average of $7,331 per child annually. So it's important to also note that sites operating 4 hours or less per day are exempt from child care licensing, and I have the RCW listed there. Okay, ECEAP requirements. So I'm just going to pull out some of these. But you can see we're going to, it's listed in the RFA. It'll talk a little bit about the ECEAP requirements around enrollment, comprehensive services, education qualifications, but I'm only going to talk about a few of these with you. So enrollment of eligible children. So ECEAP enrollment is for 3- and 4-year-old children whose family income is at or below 110% of the federal poverty level, and children with other specific risk factors correlated with school success, and that's according to a statewide prioritization system. So 90% of enrolled children must meet the income threshold or be on an individualized education plan for special education, also known as an IEP. Comprehensive services for enrolled children. This is a requirement of ECEAP. This is preschool education, but it's also developmental and health screenings, health and nutrition services coordination. This is including family support and engagement services. And then I also wanted to point out parent-teacher conferences. So contractors are required to provide a minimum of 3 hours of parent-teacher conferences per child per year. And this is partnering with parents to learn about the child's family, their culture, language, and family life, and their needs. This is also a time for shared developmental goals, to share screening and assessment results, talk about the child's progress and school readiness. And then finally, there's also a minimum of 3 family support visits per family per year. And this is partnering with parents in a strengths-based approach to assess the family's unique strengths and needs, support the family in setting goals, follow up on progress towards these goals, and offer relevant community resources and referrals. So I'm just going to pause really quick on this slide. I want to make sure that it looks like people are writing in questions, and I just want to make sure that none of these are something that should be handled at this very moment. So bear with me. Okay. Great question so far. Okay, so I am going to just type one thing. Okay. Okay, site level priorities. So DEL will prioritize the following site-level characteristics for expansion slots. So these include underserved communities and populations, rural and tribal communities, and family child care homes. So underserved populations. So the Department of Early Learning is seeking to increase equity of access for children statewide. And so the Department of Early Learning will award priority points to applications that propose to operate preschool sites within the boundaries of a school district that has state-funded full-day kindergarten, or that are currently underserved by ECEAP and/or Head Start, as measured by the Department of Early Learning's ECEAP saturation study. So when we talk about ECEAP saturation study, there is a link to that in, I believe, section 2 of the RFA. So, and I have a links page coming up that will also refer you to that. For rural and tribal communities, this priority is to ensure that ECEAP expansion slots are distributed equitably across the state. So DEL will award priority points to applications that propose to operate preschool services at sites that are located in zip codes designated as large rural town which is defined by the Rural Urban Commuting Area Codes, which are RUCAs. Or a small town or isolated rural area. And sites operated by or in collaboration with tribal organizations such as a tribe or organization affiliated with a tribe. Family child care homes priority. So DEL will award priority points to applications that propose to serve expansion slots at licensed family child care homes. So in order to provide adequate infrastructure to support ECEAP in family child care homes, the Department of Early Learning recommends that a contractor propose 20 or more slots in family child care homes and assign a minimum of 4 slots per home. Applicants proposing this must request a minimum of 12 family child care home slots. Okay, funding. So as I said previously, contractors will receive $7,331 per child per year. There are no additional funds available for capital expenditures or startup costs. Contractors will receive the full amount per slot this first year. Classes funded through this round 2 of ECEAP expansion must begin no later than January 4th, 2016. And the contract period is on or about November 1st, 2015 to July 10th, 2016. Minimum qualifications. So minimum qualifications are being a public or private organization, licensed to do business in Washington with a demonstrated capacity to operate an early learning program, and a minimum of 20 slots at a contractor. And again, this is not a slot minimum for the site, it's for the contractor. And the other minimum qualification is the agreement to meet the early achievers timelines. So I wanted to go over those with you briefly here. So early achievers participation for our existing ECEAP providers is that they must enroll in early achievers by October 1st, 2015. And then they need to rate a level 4 or a 5 by March 1st, 2016. So I just want to point out that's for our current existing ECEAP sites. And if a provider or a site rates below that level 4, they must complete some additional activities with the Department of Early Learning and then rate a level 4 or 5 within 6 months after starting those activities. Now this is the slide for early achievers participation, and this is for new ECEAP providers, new sites. So these new sites need to enroll in early achievers within 30 days of the start of their ECEAP contract. And then they have 12 months to rate a level 4 or 5. And that's unless we're talking that the site is a licensed or certified child care center or home. And then if that level 4 minimum isn't met, then again, there's remedial activities that need to be completed, and then the site will need to rate within 4 or 5, the level 4 or 5 within the 6 months thereafter. So this is for basically license-exempt new ECEAP sites. Because our next slide is for our new licensed or certified child care centers and homes. So for this one, these sites need to rate a level 4 or 5 within 18 months of the start of the ECEAP contract. And it's the same turnaround time. If that level 4 isn't met, then rating a level 4 or 5 within 6 months of starting those remedial activities. And here at the Department of Early Learning, ECEAP, we do provide a lot of support and guidance around early achievers. So I think sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming to wonder what do all of these steps mean, but you wouldn't be alone in this. So. Okay, and then minimum qualifications continued is the notification to neighboring Head Start and ECEAP programs. That's letting your Head Start grantees and ECEAP contractors in your area know of your plan, your intent to apply. We need to have contact information for community partners, and also specific site information is also very important. And then a complete application. So let's move on. And also subcontracting is listed here if that's applicable. Then that's also a minimum qualification. Okay. Application steps. So participate in the RFA webinar, and that's what you're doing right now with me. So thank you. And then it'll be very important that you submit your notice of intent to apply by September 11th by 4 p.m. So the reason I'm pointing that out is we won't be able to continue to look at your submitted completed application unless you've completed the notice of intent to apply. And again, that's due this Friday by 4 o'clock. And then you'll need to submit a complete application by September 22nd at 4 p.m. And this includes the narrative, the site level information, and budget template, and attachments. So here, this slide seems a bit overwhelming, but it isn't. I just wanted to, and all of this is listed and available to you, and I believe it's a part of your RFA. So you can look there. You don't have to write all of this down. It is in the RFA. So, but I just wanted to put this up here just to give you a sense of the timeline for this application. And you'll see here questions and answers posted from today's webinar will be on September 17th. And I told you earlier that there would be a page of resources with links, and all of these are linked within your RFA. So you'll have access to a sample ECEAP contract. You'll have access to the saturation study by district. And then there's also application exhibits. So again, we're back to Exhibit A, Notice of Intent to Apply. This is required, and it is due this Friday by 4 p.m. You'll also see that there's an Exhibit B, which is that budget template, and that site level information that's also required. And then Exhibit C is the application checklist and certification. And I find that that's also very helpful to take a look at. Okay. So application details. The applicant must answer the questions for each section in a narrative format. There is a 25-page limit for the total application narrative. but this is excluding attachments. And throughout the RFA, you'll see where certain things that we require don't count against this 25-page limit. It is noted on there. Oh. Okay, and then please note, points are available for each section and the requirements for the application narrative. So here is an example of the points that are that each of the different sections are worth. I find this very helpful when you're, when you're filling out your application. And this is on, starts on page 10 of your RFA if you have it in front of you. We won't go through all of these, but we did want you to have an idea. So I'm just going to pause really quick before we jump into the application components. Okay. It looks like people are continuing to type some great questions that we will work on getting those answers written. I really appreciate that. Great. Okay. All right. Application components. Contact information is Section 3.1 of the RFA. And you'll see that that's simply the organization name, contact person, and then the next part is the minimum qualifications. Which we kind of went over a little bit earlier in the slides. We talked about being licensed to do business and then the early achievers timelines. And then section 3.3 is site information. And 3.3 for me is on page 14. And so when it comes to the site information, there's Exhibit B that is the RFA Site Level Information Excel Workbook. And it's under tab 1. And we'll need the site address and additional information, also like the school district, tribal affiliation, early achievers participation status. The ECEAP performance standards, and those are standards A through F. And there is a link in your RFA to our ECEAP performance standards so that you have ease of access there. For each of these, you must describe your current related experience. You'll talk about how you're going to implement the ECEAP requirements for each of these sections and include who's going to do these tasks and other related specifics for each section. Okay, so section A is administration. So in this one, you're going to, you'll talk about how you are, any current related experience you have, and how you plan to implement these requirements. And you'll include your current system for self-monitoring and continuous improvement. You'll want to talk about your, the community partners you already have, and plans for conducting your parent policy council, and also for conducting your health advisory committee. In Section B of our performance standards, this covers enrollment and eligibility. So again, when you're thinking about this and you're writing about it, think about ways that you're going to be implementing these requirements. Who do you have in mind, or who do you have hired already that can do these tasks? And you're going to want to include details around a recruitment plan for how you're going to reach out and connect with eligible children and families, what strategies and locations you have. And then you'll also want to cover any special populations that you propose to serve, and how you propose to address the unique needs of these populations. So it may be working with children who are dual language learners, or children who are experiencing homelessness. So also, this is an area where you can talk about your plan to start ECEAP preschool classes no later than January 4th, and by September 30th every year thereafter. And also, you'll be talking about a plan to ensure that you're fully enrolled in your ECEAP classes and entering all enrolled children into our ELMS data system by December 15th, 2015. So ELMS is our early learning management system, and there's an ECEAP requirement about entering family and child information into ELMS. So Section C is around human resources. So this talks about staffing patterns, consultant roles. It talks about who's required to be on staff and what their educational background needs to be. It also talks about required training, volunteer training and background checks, and also merit. If you don't know what merit is, it stands for our Managed Education and Registry Information Tool. It is also where we hold our applications for early achievers. So on those previous slides, when I said you need to be enrolled in early achievers or participating, it's in merit that those applications live. Section D, this covers our health, safety, and nutrition. So you'll be covering your plan on how you plan to work with families to ensure children have access to ongoing well child care, dental care, and that they have a medical home and a dental home. You'll also be sharing your plan to develop an individualized health plan whenever it's needed. And that's for children with special health care needs, perhaps if they're on medication or they have asthma or allergies. Section E is early childhood education. And so this is where you will talk about how you plan to meet all of these performance standards, what your plan is. You'll also be attaching a daily class schedule, and you'll separate that by site if the schedule varies by site. And also you'll include a school year calendar showing actual days of class. And both of these, the daily class schedule and the school year calendar, do not count as part of the 25-page limit. So I also want to pull out of this section, Section E, that requirement. DEL also requires contractors to assess children 3 times per year using teaching strategies goals. So you'll be talking about that as well. Section F is family partnerships. So family support services. So this approach for developing family and parent goals and action plans and planning to help families meet their goals. You'll be giving resources. And you'll also be describing family engagement and leadership development plans. ECEAP requirements, the contract. Also a very important document in providing ECEAP services. So we already went over some of the requirements. So early achievers, it is required that successful applicants participate in early achievers and also include their experience with this process and the current status of your early achievers registrations, if any. And so if it turns out you haven't begun the process, you'll need to describe how you plan to do this, what your steps will be. The other part of this is how you plan to incorporate the program quality tools used in early achievers and how you'll incorporate those into your monitoring and classroom practices. So in early achievers, they use the classroom assessment and scoring system, which is known as CLASS. And that looks at the child-teacher interaction. And then the Early Childhood Environmental Rating Scale, which is also known as ECERS or ERS. And that looks at the environment within the classroom. So you'll need to be able to incorporate those tools into your monitoring practices. So DEL wants to increase the opportunities for eligible children to access ECEAP services through licensed child care providers. So in this section, you'll indicate if you have any proposed sites where licensed child care centers or homes will be providing new or expanded ECEAP services. And you'll briefly describe how you'll integrate ECEAP services into these child care settings, focused on elements not described elsewhere in the application. Cultural relevance, so applicants will describe how they will provide services that are culturally relevant to their community. And you'll be talking about, how you'll be culturally relevant when it comes to doing outreach and enrolling families, when you're doing staff recruitment, and also covering health, education, and family support services. Okay, and then we have the application components continued, management, structure, and organizational capacity. This is section 3.5. And you'll be describing the agency mission, organizational structure, and staffing. And you'll want to indicate who is going to be responsible for each of these different following areas. So who will be serving as ECEAP director? And this person will be participating in meetings, webinars, monthly calls. Who will be ensuring compliance with all ECEAP requirements, training staff and subcontractors, monitoring and providing technical assistance. So you'll want to be able to identify who these people will be. Proposed budget and fiscal management is under section 3.6. And there is a template available. And So I think that, and I showed you the links that have to this budget template. And then 3.7 is letters of support and collaboration. So hang on one second. And then, so letters of support and collaboration is section 3.7, and then application checklist and certifications is section 3.8. What I realized is that my next slides actually go into a little bit more depth. I was covering that all on one slide. So thanks for your patience on that. So under management structure and organizational capacity, you'll see these are the different areas that you'll be talking about. And then under proposed budget and fiscal management, you'll refer also to the ECEAP contract. And then there's the budget template. And then under fiscal management, you'll be covering fiscal management staffing, internal controls. You'll talk about your inventory. And then questions. So as I stated earlier in our webinar together, I won't be directly answering your questions. I'll take a look and see if there's any that are appropriate for me to answer right now. But DEL, things that are put in writing is what we're legally bound to. And so we want to make sure that we give everyone the same answer and we put that in writing, which is why I'm not answering your questions verbally for the most part today. But what I'd like to do just really quick, I'm just opening up the, I'm opening up my questions to make sure that there's not anything that I might be able to answer for you right now. And I also want to give you just a few more moments to type in questions, things that have come up, anything you're not certain of, anything I didn't cover. Okay. Great. Great questions, I just have to say. Okay. Great. Good. Okay, so I am going to just pause here for a moment, and if you don't have any further questions, you are free to exit this webinar. Just please remember that intent to apply is due this Friday by 4 p.m. And then we will post answers to this from this webinar today on September 17th. And if you have any other questions, let's say you get off this webinar and you're like, why didn't I ask that? It's okay. You can email the ECEAP inbox at ECEAP, so ECEAP, at del.wa.gov. So I will quietly sit here and allow people to type in. Feel free to exit, but I want to make sure if I end the webinar now, I won't be able to capture your great questions. So I will say thank you. And this was Sue Rose with the Department of Early Learning, ECEAP. Okay, I am going to go ahead, and it doesn't look like any more questions have come in. So I will go ahead and end this webinar, and I just want to thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to be with me on this. Thank you so much. Take care.